I come from Brazil. There's no God, there's no hell, there's no heaven, there's no eternal life, and that's it. My point is,
Yeah.
I don't believe that we could use Bible as a history book to define society. That's my point. I won't believe in God. I believe in
So I'm saying, what would change your mind?
nothing.
What was the essence of Jesus'
That he was a
message?
communist.
Hey, so just had a pretty difficult conversation. Brazilian atheist with some Catholic background from his family, but certainly doesn't subscribe to any notion of God or Bible. Has pretty critical opinions of it. So the conversation didn't really go anywhere. Well, anywhere meaning, as in trying to find some common ground, trying to end in a way to leave him with a bit of food for thought. I think it was very, as they say, the soil was very hard with this situation. So anyway, my prayer is that the only thing I can point to is that the gentleman was very unhappy with the state of the world, rightly so. I hope that he thinks about why the world is the way it is, and what does he think can be done to fix it. I'm not sure that any solutions that he was offering would actually make any difference, or they haven't tried before. So anyway, leave him to God, leave him to his providence. Hopefully the man will maybe soften one day, have another chance to look at the Bible in an open way. That's the only thing I can do, really, just pray for the man. So anyway, hopefully you found this conversation interesting. Let me know what you thought, and hopefully to see you in the next video. God bless.
Do you have any faith, any religion, any belief?
No.
Even as you were growing up, did you grow up in a family
I did grow up in a Catholic family.
Catholic family?
Yeah.
Okay. And then how did that kind of evolve for you? What happened as you became adult?
Yeah, don't really know. I think it was natural. I was educated in a Catholic school. I used to go to the church every Sunday morning, part of the choir and things like that. I was an older boy.
Oh, right.
When I was like 10. But then, I don't know. Although my mom is, she's a believer. She believes in God, and she doesn't really go to the church. So we just wasn't forced to go to church or anything like that.
Okay.
It wasn't an obligation in my family. And then I think I just walked away. It stopped making sense for me.
That's very interesting. So, what is it that sort of stopped making sense? Was it the belief in God, or was it the sort of more the religious expectations, or both?
Religious is a social thing, a social environment, which was nice, was cool, was fun. I have got a lot of friends, but there's also a manipulative side of it that I didn't really like.
Okay.
And then, God stopped making sense because, I don't know, you start to grow up and you go to school, you learn things, and then you just realize that makes no sense whatsoever. And like, can't believe in superstition.
Is that so? That's interesting, right? So do you believe that faith at this stage, given what you know, what you've been taught, would be more like superstition?
Yeah, the way it was taught to me, it was very superstitious. Yes.
Okay.
I think it probably the way religion are organized, it made sense in the past, but I don't believe it make any sense anymore in the kind of society that we are going to, and what things that the way science has developed and things that we know doesn't make any sense. Perhaps I like the rituals; it's quite beautiful, but it's that, isn't it? You can create your own rituals at home. Like you have people who have rituals related to nature and how nature is developed, and instead of rituals with I don't know, some kind of fantastic entity.
Right.
with magic powers and things like that.
So that would be quite interesting for me to sort of explore more, like, what is it that you are rejecting, right? So what is it that doesn't make sense anymore? Like, how would you explain, if someone were to ask you, summarize Christianity, summarize it, how would
Miracles
you...
doesn't make any sense.
Okay.
And try making people to believe that kind of thing it did happen in the past, which we know that is impossible. It's unacceptable. It's like you can't.
But I mean, miracles, right? Miracles are by definition things that are unexplainable, right? And people today believe something has happened that's miraculous, and they cannot explain it. And are we saying that those are just people who are deluded, who are perhaps not as educated, or how do we explain things that we cannot explain? Like even science cannot explain always everything, all the questions that we have, that we're asking.
But that's the thing, isn't it? Science don't try to explain all the questions we have.
Yeah.
Science try to understand, and then of course it's a process to understand. There are a lot of things that we still don't understand. A lot of things we're still learning.
Yes.
It's just like over a few hundred years, over 200 years that since Darwin wrote the evolution theory. But there's so much has changed since then. You can see clearly how things make sense. Yes, of course, we're trying to make sense of things and to have an answer for those things, but we will as we learn, and we will as we progress. I don't believe science is trying to answer all the questions. Science is trying to understand the laws of the universe in which we live in. That's what science is about. Religion try to have answers for everything, and when they don't have answers, they just think that that's the way it is. That's the mystery of God. We don't have to ask those questions, which is not true. We have to keep asking questions, even though science don't have answers for those questions, but one day we will understand.
Let's take something that is concrete, that is physical, that is tangible, and that is the Bible, right? Because
concrete and tangible, the Bible.
Well, I mean something that
the book.
is the book that is the foundation for the belief of the Christians have, right? Because we can both agree that these beliefs that Christianity has come up with didn't come out of thin air, but they are based on something that is written in a book somewhere. Right?
Yeah, written by man.
Written by
thousands
by
of years ago.
Thousands of years ago.
A completely different sort of society.
Sure.
Right.
But history nonetheless, right?
Yeah,
So
the difference is that history is based on facts that people actually wrote it, and then Bible is not. Bible is making oral things that was transmitted from generation to generation. Just for you to understand, we know that the Christian Bible, for instance, was start to be written 300 years after the death of Jesus and after the death of all the apostles, by people who actually inherited the stories. So how much, because we don't have really good memory, so how much of that Bible is written there was actually created for the descendants of those people who actually lived on that? It wasn't things taking noted and registered as it happens.
So it's interesting that you said it, because we actually know a lot more than that, right? So you said sort of 300. Actually, I think we believe that some of the letters of Paul were written within several decades of Jesus's life. We know that
Paul was an apostle of Jesus.
Saint Paul,
he wasn't. No.
Okay, so
no, he was a Roman that actually was a follower, but he wasn't one of the apostles. Saint Paul was never one of the disciples of Jesus. He was converted later.
Okay, fine. We can say
he was
that
the one who disseminated.
Ones.
No, of course. Saint Paul was one who actually brought the Christianity to the Greeks and to the Romans, because Christianity on its origin, it was just meant for the Jew people.
It was. I mean, it was meant for everyone in the world, right?
No,
Because,
it wasn't. It was meant for the Jew people, for the selected one. He was the Messiah of the Jew people.
was the
St.
Messiah.
Paul, who is the one who actually
Yes.
brought for the rest of the world. It wasn't never meant for it, and it was a big discussion actually about it.
was certainly Jesus came to first minister to his own people first, but he did say that in the Matthew, we know in the Gospel of Matthew, the last chapter, he says, "Lo and behold, I will send you to make disciples of all nations."
And how can we be sure that he
nations.
actually Matthew did say that Jesus actually said that to Matthew, and Matthew actually said that because
All
this
I'm
was
saying-
written much later.
No, all I'm saying is that if we just look at the Bible, we know that Jesus intended, just based on the
we
Bible.
don't. Yes,
No,
that's,
but
but
based on
that's
the
exactly
Bible,
my
yeah.
point. It was written much later,
But what I'm saying
after
is
the
that,
death of Matthew, for his followers, not for him.
So I'm saying that the claims that you're making, let's agree that we're going to be making claims from the Bible. Whether the Bible is right or wrong, let's put that to one side, right? But I'm saying is that if we use the Bible as the basis for the claims that we're making, then we have to agree that Christianity was meant, and the gospel was meant to be taken out to the world. If that wasn't the case, then why did missionaries go out to the ends of the earth, and why do missionaries still go out today? Why did even Paul
Who were the
go out?
missionaries? Paul.
Well, not just Paul. Paul went together with Barnabas, with others. Paul wasn't by himself when he went out. They agreed that Peter was going to be a missionary to the Jews, and Paul and Barnabas and Silas, they were going to go on a missionary to the non-Jewish, to the Greek world, right? That was the agreement between the early church, and then it spread out, and then many more went out everywhere, right? So that's how we are here today, right? So we know that the Christianity has spread all over the world because there was a sense in which this message was not to be contained. It was the good news for the world, right? Even Jesus said, he became a ransom for many. He says, in my Father there are many rooms. All of the things that Jesus was talking about were not supposed to be just for the Jewish people. It was for Jews first, but for the Greek and the Gentile as well. That's the doctrine of the Christian church today.
Arguably, yes.
Yeah. But I guess the way I started asking these questions is that let's put maybe even Paul's letters to one side. We know that Luke, when he wrote based on eyewitnesses. Like, he opens up his gospel saying that he has based his gospel based on the people who were eyewitnesses. So he was an eyewitness himself, but he spoke to eyewitnesses who told him what they saw and heard. So that means that we have to say that within the lifetime of disciples, things were recorded, things were being written down. And we also know
For whom? By whom?
by those who were around Jesus, right? So
Those were around Jesus mostly were people who they are illiterate people. They didn't know how to write or read in Greek, especially in Greek and Latin, which were the letters were written first in Greek, then translated but you have a very little in Aramaic. Although you have the Apocrypha, the Dead Sea scripts, but
but that's what I'm saying. So
Just-
maybe the eyewitnesses themselves weren't literate, but the person that took the effort to speak to them, they recorded it,
Okay,
right?
years later,
Sure,
decades later.
Sure, but they were
How many has
eyewitnesses,
changed?
yeah.
Because one thing, I'll tell you a story here,
Sure.
and then you go walk, I don't know, until that house, and then tell that story there for 5 people.
Yeah.
Each one of them go and repeat that story. They will change that story.
Absolutely. That's the nature
In
of storytelling.
5 days, that story is, I'm pretty sure, that not completely, but very changed.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
In 1 year, the story is completely changed. In 10 years, much more. So how
Yes.
can we just rely on that?
we can, because when
My
we
point
have,
is,
yeah.
I don't believe that we could use Bible as a history book to define society. That's my point. I'm not discussing with the faith of people who want to look at that as something to have, I don't know, hope for their souls after death. That's their problem.
yeah.
I just don't believe that we should have never use those books to define society the way we did for 1,000 years with the Roman Catholic Church.
Sure.
And in the same way, they don't believe the Quran should be used to define society in the Middle Eastern, the same way they don't believe that any religious book should define society.
Sure.
Especially because there's so many of us in society that don't believe in that. And it's okay if you want to believe in a magical creature that control your life and save your soul. In the last 1,000 years, or perhaps more, there's not one person in the whole world being resurrected. Resurrection doesn't happen. It's unnatural.
I agree that resurrection is unnatural, yeah, but that's why we
Okay.
call it's a miracle, yeah. Well,
I think a miracle is surviving in this very difficult world. This is already
Absolutely.
a miracle enough.
Absolutely,
You
yeah.
don't need like the kind of fantastic miracles and flying creatures or speaking nature, things like that, snakes.
So no, that's interesting. So let's put like I know you mentioned like we don't need a holy book or Bible for to base our society. Let's put that to one side, right? Because I would like to talk about that maybe a little bit later. But I'm still sort of stuck with Bible being a historical book. So I would say to you like even the non-Christian scholars, of which we have many, agree that the Bible was written by, in many cases, either eyewitnesses or those who were close to the eyewitnesses. That is kind of undisputable, right? No one is disputing the fact that Jesus was a real person who lived at that time, who was considered to be, quote unquote, some sort of a holy person. There were many others. He wasn't unique, right, there at that time. But scholars, Christians or non-Christian, they agree Jesus was alive, that what the Bibles are recording in many cases, maybe not everything, maybe not like you say miracles, maybe not everything that he said, there were some disputes, but everyone agrees that Jesus was a real person who
So
lived.
was Siddhartha Gautama and other
Absolutely,
religious
yeah,
leaders.
absolutely, yes.
But you don't see
No,
the
absolutely,
society being controlled by those kind of representatives of faith.
Again, you're going to the society. I'm not here to advocate for the control of society at all by any means. I'm just still kind of stuck in the
Historical importance of the Bible.
historical importance of the Bible, right?
I think there's a lot of things. Listen,
Yeah.
I studied the Bible. As I told you, I went to Catholic school.
Sure.
But and there's beautiful passages in the Bible. There's amazing things. It's really well written. As far for historical, yes, we can find some related facts, but very few. So it's not reliable for
No,
historical facts.
Actually, it's quite
Well, that's your
reliable,
opinion.
yeah.
I
Well,
do-
no. I've studied. I'm currently actually going through a Bible sort of college, and I'm studying these things. And I'm not an expert by any means, but what I'm trying to say is, I was of the similar opinion as you were. Like my background, growing up in Croatia, was a Catholic background, and I had the exact same understanding as you did. I thought it was a bunch of just maybe made up stories or combination of myth and legend and maybe some facts mixed in. But when I actually researched it, right, and my background is I went through my degrees, and I have a few of them are scientific
Perhaps I
degrees.
should turn the camera to you now.
Well, no, I'm more interested to see like what you're saying, because I know what I mean, right? But what I was trying to say is like when I actually sat down and asked those difficult questions, how can we know that the Bible as a text is trustworthy, is truthful? Does it say? I was surprised by actually how much of it is solid evidence, how much of it is reliable. And there's also, outside of the Bible, we have historians such as Josephus. He was a Jewish historian. We have a Roman historian called Pliny the Younger. We also have archaeological evidence. We have graffiti from the 1st and 2nd century in the houses of early believers who had graffiti depictions of Jesus on the cross. We have persecutions of early Christians and the letters that were not in the Bible but that are recorded from the church fathers, quote unquote. We have actually so much that convinces a rational, objective observer something very significant has happened during the life of Jesus that caused this movement to start. It wasn't a set of accidents, it wasn't a conspiracy. Something actually quite significant has happened and unique has happened that hasn't happened in the history so far. Like that is the what we have to take away from it, right? Now, I'm not saying that therefore everyone has to believe it. Obviously, everyone knows that there are people who believe it and people who don't believe it. There are people who believe in other religions. That is a separate question, but I'm just saying that there is actually something quite profound and compelling in the text itself that requires certainly rational sort of response to what I believe is a historical account and narrative. Yeah. To your point, do things get distorted over time? Of course they do. But I put to you, and I think historians have done the analysis that of the time of the 1st century, 2nd century, of all the writings, like we have Hannibal Wars, we have other accounts of the Caesars, life of Julius Caesar. All of those accounts don't have as much of copies of manuscripts or historical basis as the Bible does.
But they are much more reliable because we know that the Romans, they were very meticulous in describing and registering everything that there was.
Sure.
They have a method for it. In the about scientific. That's what science is about. That's what history is about. It's what we have like actually evidence created by people who had. For creating the evidence why all things were happening. The witness, not 10 years later or 20 years later or 100 years later. No, and what I'm saying is like, yes, you're going to find a lot of cross information that is in Bible, that is historical. I'm not saying that it was, there's something in there, and it is compelling writing. What I'm saying is not reliable as a historical book. It's not reliable. So you can look at it and try to. We still have to study a lot and to research a lot to make those cross information with other sources to actually become more reliable.
So I'm saying all those cross references. Like let me give you one cross reference. Like one of the historians has done this analysis. They've looked at the names in the Bible. All the names. There are many names. There's Simon. There's Jesus, there's Mary, there's hundreds of names, and they've compared statistically the occurrences of names as they appear in the Bible in that century. They've compared them to the names that they found in the tombs of the 1st century, and did a statistical analysis. Are those names the kind of names that we would expect to see from the 1st century? Because the popularity of the names changes with each generation. In one generation, the name Simon is the most popular. The next generation, it could be Peter. The next generation could be something else, right? And they found that the correlation between the frequency of certain names on the tombstones, on the ossuaries, correlates very closely to the names that we have of the Bible of the 1st century, right? So that's a purely, it doesn't matter what the text says at all. It's just purely statistical analysis, critical analysis of the number of names that are mentioned, and that just places the text in that generation.
Oh, but I'm not disagreeing with that. I don't believe that those names, all those peoples were invented. We know, for example, that the Romans wrote about the.
But you couldn't have invented them unless you lived in that generation. Like, for example, if you...
the Romans have wrote about the Jesus when they were in... We know that Jesus existed, but we don't know if what they claim about him is true.
Okay.
And I'm talking about that because when you are among ignorant people, illiterate people, superstitious people, they believe in whatever they want to. They see miracles everywhere. They see abnormality, unnatural things as a miracle. They see magic, whatever they want to, is happening now.
Yeah.
If you go to South America, you have a lot of people who follow those, I don't know, charlatans, making miracles and curing people that's not cured, and I don't know. So and there's a lot of people who believe it.
Yeah, well,
and you can't talk to them, and if you say that that's not true, that's not happening, they probably will fight you. So imagine 2,000 years ago, when you didn't have, because now we have information. You have other sources. You have science to prove you wrong, and even though you don't believe it.
But what I'm saying,
you have Donald Trump. People believe that Donald Trump is a really nice person, and even though everyone proves that he's not a nice person, you still have the followers. So imagine for religious people,
Yeah.
superstitious people.
Except interestingly, right, when you do actually read the Bible, it's actually written in the opposite way. A lot of times Jesus would perform a miracle, people would not believe him. Interestingly, right?
8% of people who are actually very religious barely read the Bible. When they read, they don't understand what they are reading. So,
But it's not about what
yes,
you're reading, but I'm
there's a
saying-
lot of interesting things in Bible. Yes.
No, but what I'm trying to say is that if you were to sit down and write a book, right, let's say, that wants to point to your founder as someone who's really great, and you wanted to attract a great following, and that's what we see in a lot of cults, right? A lot of cults, when they write these days, or even in the last couple of centuries, we have books that make their founder look very good, right? They make him feel like very good. He's done great things, and you want to make sure that any mistakes and any sort of issues with your founder or the close circles are minimized, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the Bible is not written like that. Interestingly, right? There's a lot of flaws. Peter denies Jesus. We have disciples who are confused. We have early followers who abandon Jesus after seeing him feed the 5,000, after they see him raise the dead. Because they are disappointed in him, they expected someone who's going to come and overthrow the Romans, but he doesn't do that. So they're disappointed in him, and then they leave him. So by the last pages of the time where he's of the time where he's crucified, he's really left with only a handful of closest followers, because everyone else has left him. Right?
They were expecting a political leader, and he was a religious leader.
Exactly. And not just that, but the things that he was speaking about and advocating was so contrary to anyone's expectations. Like, what was he saying? Like, if I were to ask you, what was the gospel, what was the good news that Jesus was preaching, what would you say to me? What was the essence of Jesus'
That he was a
message?
communist.
Okay, explain that to me a little
Well,
bit. Yeah.
but what do you believe that is when he talk about respect the other the way you respect, or love the other the way you love yourself, share what you have, it's for the poor, it's for it to be equal. It's a bit revolutionary in that kind of sense, because you're talking about in a society, or building a society where everyone is equal and everyone respects each other. And if he's revolutionary for these days to think about that, someone will call you a communist. But imagine on those days when you have monarchs and emperors and things like that. I think that was the most revolutionary and difficult to understand in the message of Jesus, because at his point of view, everyone was equal. The prostitute, the bandits, the robbers, the diseased one, the sick, everyone's.
But it's interesting that you mentioned the word communism, because communism would in many senses imply that he was here to imply equality in terms of economic status, but that's not necessarily what he was saying. Interestingly, Jesus said you will always have poor among you, because there was an incident in which one of the women brought a very expensive jar of perfume. I don't know if you remember this from the Bible, but she broke open the jar, and this was a jar that was worth probably 1 year's wages. So today's that'll be like 30 to 40,000 pounds. It's something very, very rare. And she broke it open, and she anointed him. She put it basically on his head and on his feet, that expensive jar of perfume. And then one of the disciples, it was Judas actually, he was saying, why such waste? That jar could have been sold and could have been given to hundreds of poor people to feed them. Jesus actually rebuked Judas at that stage. He said, leave her alone. She has done a beautiful thing for me. You will always have the poor among you, but you will not have me among you forever, because he knew that he was soon to be crucified. His days were numbered. He knew that of himself. That was his mission. And so that sort of goes against his, he wasn't here to usurp the economical status, political status, and that's why people ultimately abandoned it. That's why Judas left it, because he said, look at this guy. He's giving away the wealth. He's misappropriating it. He's not here to bring about victories against the oppressor. He's doing none of that stuff, because that wasn't Jesus' mission. Interestingly, none of that was Jesus' mission.
Right.
So what was his mission? right? How would we put his mission together? How would we characterize his mission? What was he here to do on this earth?
I don't know, and also, to be frankly, I really don't care. I don't follow that kind of thing. This man existed in the. I think the beautiful teachings that we can get from life of Jesus. For me, treating others the way you like to be treated, that's the most important one. I think that the Sermon on the Mountain is really beautiful written. Not sure if it was actually told by him. We know that in the birth of Christianity, especially the Roman Christianity, texts were selected, the ones were perfect for that kind of religion. I don't know which Bible you follow, probably not the same. I thought the Orthodox people thought there's a different Bible. Then we have this Bible was translated here for King James. Now we know that several things that there is like mistranslated. We don't have access to the original text that is probably in the Vatican Library. So I really don't know. I think what we know is, yes, you have the Bible and you can read that Bible. The Christianity is actually very short. Catholics, you're Catholic, so you know that.
I'm just a Christian.
Right, okay. So most of the Old Testament is based on the Jews, and the Christian is just like this. Again, selected books selected by the Romans to create the Vatican, the Christian Catholic Church. So we read what they decided for us to read. I don't know, over 1,000 years has passed. God knows how many times, how many people has actually changed and manipulated the words. St. Thomas Aquin probably did change quite a lot in his own way of seeing things. As I said to you, I don't know. I don't really know why. You asked me if I believe in God. I told you that no, and you started talking about how important is Christianity. It shouldn't be that important anymore.
Well,
Unless you actually want that kind of thing for your life, and that you think it's important for you as a spiritual guidance. But that's all.
Well, if I turn now, I'm not going to turn the camera, but let me kind of speak about myself then, just to show some of the important thing that I think why this is actually much more fundamental than we all realize, right? And that what ultimately drew.
Who realize?
Most of the people, like even the things that you said now about how you believe that the Bible came about. I'm not going to talk about Bible anymore, by the way. I'm going to switch topics, but I'm saying is that. Things that you mentioned just now very much remind me of myself. It's a kind of a secular. It's kind of like well we all believe, and we diminish some of the value of the beliefs over time, and I appreciate that because
I don't diminish the value of the believers. My family
not of
believers.
the believers. No,
I don't think that is. You ask what is my position, and I told you that's my view. I come from a religious family, and my point of view is I respect. In the same way, I respect the other religions of the world, other beliefs in the world. I come from Brazil, and that's like a very mixed sort of believers. You have people who believe in ancient African religion, which is beautiful, and I respect that. You have people who believe in Buddhism, Japanese Buddhism. You have people who believe in Krishna. You have people who believe in every, and that's fine. Every person should be free to find and follow its spiritual guidance wherever they feel fit.
Yeah. So I'm not forcing anyone on anything. I find this very fascinating, interesting discussion. It's something I made it my life purpose to research, right? To research, and that's why I'm quite interested in this topic. And I don't want to take too much of your time anymore, but if you just indulge me 2 points, if I can just make 2 points, and then I will happily leave. But like one thing that I want to say to you is that we talked about the impact of Christianity on this world. I think the impact is much greater than all of us realize, and that is
It's too great.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
my point.
I think there are
It has
negative.
been too great. It went too far.
Well, can I just
Disagree? Of
No.
course.
I would agree. I would actually agree. There's some negative impacts that people sort of continue.
There's too many negative impacts.
But do we appreciate the positive impacts on this world? Let me tell you a couple of examples. Tom Holland, who is a non-Christian historian, he has attributed the Western civilization as we know it to Christianity and to the Protestant
As we know,
ethic.
but
Right.
Western civilization would exist
With
without
its-
Christianity,
No,
and it would have been different. But
no. He's making
yes.
he's making a scholarly point that even the rise of the science, the rise of rationality in the 19th century, the rise of even the greats of the science like Isaac Newton, Niels Bohr, Kepler, and many others, they were devoutly Christian people, religious people, and it was
Charles Darwin was Christian.
and it was their Christianity and their belief that drew them to find out more about the creation that they believed was a result of God's action. They believed that God, and in some sort of divine being, must be responsible for this thing.
So,
It
yeah.
must be intelligible. It must be understandable. But it doesn't stop there. I mean, I would say it goes beyond just science. It goes into charity, like hospitals. Hospitals are a product of a Christian mindset. Charity is a product of a Christian mindset. Tom Holland, again, who is non-Christian scholar, he's done the research and compared societies in the world. Like my wife, she's from a non-Christian background. She's from Buddhist background because she grew up in South Korea. And the history of those people there and the history of the Chinese people, you do not find things such as you find in the Western world, such as the hospitals, universities, education, rights of women, rights of human beings, the abolition of slavery. All of those items without fail are uniquely attributed to Christianity. And we have to ask ourselves why, right? And because at the very core...
I think it's very hypocritical what you're saying.
It's
First of all,
true.
no, it's not.
Well, I would
It's not
challenge...
completely true. It's a distorted true.
Okay. I did not-
What kind of slavery we are talking about? Because slavery is pretty much real in our society.
Sure.
Okay, but we institutionalized slavery
Yeah,
was,
yeah.
especially in the last 5 centuries, was invented. Black slavery was invented by West society. Before that, slavery existed as a spoil of wars.
Yes, okay.
Slavery as a market
Sure.
was invented for the people from this continent, Europeans,
Yes, absolutely. What I'm saying is that it was the Christians
and it was sanctioned
who
by a
fought,
pope.
but it was the Christians who fought
It was the
against...
Christians who invented black slavery. Black slavery just exists in the last 500 years, invented by the Western world. Didn't
Yes.
invent it in any other society before.
Okay.
Slavery in other society was a spoil of wars.
Yes.
Not like this, like children's and women's and old people marketed for another country the way the Africans were was invented by Europeans.
I'm not disputing that it was not invented by Europeans. My charge is that
And the way we live,
abolition...
and the way it was completely it was an abomination. Actually, the abolition, it was even the abandon of that people. And also, if you think about industrialization of the world, especially in the first 2 centuries, there was slavery as well.
Oh yeah, of course, yes, of course. I'm not saying...
So it just
yeah.
changed from one type of slavery to another.
Oh,
And we still have people working in very bad conditions. Like we don't call this slavery because you don't want to, but working class is pretty much slavery.
Oh, no,
you don't have access
I
to
completely agree with you, Bob.
You
What
don't
I'm
have
saying...
access to the information, to the quality of life that middle class or other people live. I'm not saying that there's not worse types of society. Yes, I'm not saying that this is perfect or wrong. So we're still trying to find out how to live. This is the best that we could. We have democracy in some countries where we don't have in others, and democracy is not perfect. But we're still learning how to do that. So what I'm saying is, you're trying to defend that this. Yes, we agree with you. Yeah, we had Christianity in this in West world for 2,000 years, and this was it. We don't know how would be society if we didn't have Christianity. So So it's impossible to know.
What I'm saying is
And you
that
can't compare people
Yeah.
from Europe, from people to other continents, because it's completely different. It developed differently.
yeah, but it wasn't me comparing it. It was the scholars who compared it, and they found these differences. All I'm saying is
I'm
that
saying that what I'm saying,
what I'm
that's,
saying
that
is that
some
not-
scholars may agree with that, but some scholars disagree with that. So you have other people's.
Sure, and
thoughts as well.
I'm not necessarily specializing in this area. And my point was not to defend Christianity or Christian
Because it's
theological state.
indefensible.
Well, I would disagree with you about indefensibility, but I would just say is that I was just reacting to the claims that there was nothing. People sometimes say, there's nothing good that came out of Christianity.
There's
Actually,
a lot of
quite
things
a
that
lot
came
of good.
yes.
That was my point, right? And my point is that we live and breathe in a society where law and order are cherished, right? And we often don't give enough credit to it, and we ask ourselves, where did the English law came from and all that stuff. Like, actually, a lot of it based on Judeo-Christian thinking, right? But that was just my only point, right? My only point was that not to diminish the value that came out of Judeo-Christian thinking, because we are the benefactors of that thinking. Yes, there was a lot of bad things.
But we have to understand that Greece was really quite well organized in that kind of sense as well. And first laws actually didn't come from the Judeans. The first type of laws, if I'm not, is the Hammurabi Code, which when they were based, they were Arabics, and they were not Christians. They were not even religious by that time, or not religious in the sense of the patriarchal religions, because they weren't. Muhammad didn't exist, so they weren't like Muslims. So, and they existed some kind of codes of laws that was growing, and we have the codes of laws from the Japanese people as well. So we have moral codes and laws from different societies that wasn't Christian. So
no, I'm not saying that there was no other.
No, the laws
laws.
that you will develop the laws independent of Christianity or not. But when you're saying that this kind of laws exist because of Christianity, yes,
What
because
these laws do, the laws of the England and America and much of the Western world do because of Christianity. That was my only point. I'm not saying it was the only law, but I'm just saying we live and breathe. Like I'm very like, even if I didn't know anything about Christianity, I would be very thankful if the legacy of Christianity is law and order. I have to say I'm thankful for that, right? Because otherwise
you're very naive then.
I will be very not very naive.
Well, they didn't invent law and order. I think that we have other societies that existed before Christianity that were very well organized as well.
I would be very remiss to live in any other society and knowing, like I said, having traveled, knowing people who are in other society. There's a reason why people flee from Middle East. They flee. Where are they going? They're going to the West. People are fleeing
but
from
are
Asia.
They are fundamentalist Muslims. They are religious as well.
They're fleeing chaos. They're fleeing.
They are religious. They are fleeing from the religious part of the Middle Eastern.
Sure, but they're fleeing from a society that is oppressive. Exactly,
yes.
that is oppressive.
They're oppressive because of religion.
May or may not be.
No, they are oppressive because of religion.
Could be. There's been oppression. For example, Stalinist Russia. A lot of people have left.
Military oppression, yes.
There's oppressions of all sorts of ways. That's what I'm saying. There's military. There's political. There's other oppression. There's a reason in which the people are fleeing to somewhere. It's because they like law and order. They like stability. I'm not saying that, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to defend Christianity. My only point was that we diminish...
People will flee from oppression
the benefits.
From everywhere.
Oh yeah. Where do they go?
For less oppressive places.
Exactly. Less oppressive places.
But independent of he's Christian
places.
or not, independent of his, if he's less oppressive, they will flee to less oppressive places.
Which happen to be Christian.
No, not necessarily.
Okay. Well, anyway, we can maybe
Japan
disagree.
is not very oppressive places. They're not necessarily Christian or religious.
Correct. Yeah, but is someone going to Japan? Is someone fleeing to Japan?
Well,
who does? Who is going to Japan?
Well, who's fleeing here?
Every single person is fleeing here from pretty much every single country
is it?
On the earth. Like Africans are coming here.
And this is not oppressive society.
No, I'm saying it is. But
everyone can come in and come out as
But why are people coming here? Why are people coming here?
Looking for better places to live.
Exactly. Why are they not going to Japan?
why do they go, why would they go to Japan?
Exactly. Why would they go to Japan, right? What does Japan have to offer them? Because something is being offered to them here
Have
that
you ever
they're not
been
getting
to Japan?
it. No, I haven't
How
been
do
to
you,
Japan.
you get to Japan?
How do you get to Japan?
Yeah.
You have to fly or take a
Yeah,
boat.
because it's an island. This is very tiny as well.
Yeah, because England is not so close
And
to
England is
Africa
easier
either.
to get into
Sure.
in Japan. You need a visa to get into Japan. You don't need a visa to get here. So it's much easier to get in here. People are not just fleeing to England. People are also fleeing to France. People are fleeing to Germany.
Sure,
to
it's a
fleeing
Western
to
country. All
Italy,
of those countries, all of those countries are product
or
of.
Americas.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. All of those countries are a product and are based on certain laws and orders that
They're
are,
not necessarily Christians.
well, they're
Based on Christianity.
Exactly, that's my point. That's
Right.
my only point. Yeah.
And this thing that
Yeah.
it was the order of the Christianity that created the law and order that in which you live.
It's not my opinion. These are the scholars' opinions, right? I would not dare to say that because I'm not as educated in this matter. But people who I've read, people who are not Christians, they give credit to the Western society of Europe, to the North American society as being a product of a Christian, Judeo-Christian thinking. That's not my words. Don't take my words for it. Do your own research and feel free to disagree. My only point was that that's what they're saying. That was the benefit of the society, right? But that was my first point. The second point is probably more important, and I'll say it, and then I'll leave you. I don't want to cause you irritation on anything like that. That was not my point, but my understanding of the actual message of Christianity is as follows, right? Jesus was saying about people that there's something wrong with all of us, right? I don't know if you'd agree or disagree with it, but if I look at the world, obviously I see beauty, I see tremendous beauty, I see tremendous kindness and love from people, individuals of all sorts of religions, backgrounds, and races, but I also see something fundamentally problem that I see in myself first, and then I also see in the world. And that problem, Bible says it's sin, but it's a sin that basically says that I need to take care of myself first. I need to please myself first before I help another person, right? That is at the fundamental problem of every human being. We disregard if we believe, even if God exists. Most people don't believe God exists, but even if they don't, right, they ultimately know that they want to please themselves, right? And that is what calls us into conflict with one another. That prevents us from reconciling with one another, from humbling ourselves versus lifting up other people, those people in poverty. These are the things that is a fundamental problem of human being. God and Jesus have known that from the beginning. This was the problem of Adam and Eve, if we believe in that story whatsoever. But their problem was because they wanted to be like God and they were disobedient to what God said to them. They wanted to become like Him, and they were sold a lie. And they basically took on themselves a sinful action, which is basically in all of us today. We are sinners because we want to please ourselves. We want to be gods ourselves. We do not want a God over us, right?
Wow.
So let me just finish. So the problem of humanity is sin, but Jesus and God, because they loved us so much, right? Because they loved us so much, they knew that we could not fix ourselves. Education was not going to fix us. Our striving harder is not going to fix us. They gave us, history is full of examples where we have tried to fix ourselves and we couldn't. Education, we've tried technology, we tried different forms of governance. It seems like we cannot help ourselves, right? But that's why Jesus ultimately came. So the gospel, the good news is that Jesus, God himself, came to die for us. Because God has said, if you are going to live in sin, the wages of sin is death. The consequence of sin is ultimately death. It's separation from God. That's what hell is, a separation from God. And that's where sin leads us. But Jesus, knowing and loving us so much, he came actually to take death on himself, on his own shoulders. So the story of Christianity is the story of love, is the story of God's love for us, so much so that his son,
Self-sacrifice.
he sacrificed himself. He sacrificed himself because he loved his creatures so much that he died for us. Very little would we want to die for some even one of each other, let alone for someone who's beneath us, such as we would be versus God. But God has loved us so much that He became one of us, lived a righteous life, and ultimately went on the cross for us.
Wow.
And
Good of him.
and because of that, Jesus says, those who believe in Him, who trust in Him, who follow Him in the way that He lived, He offers eternal life.
Right.
He offers heaven. He offers, the promise of the reconciliation with God that we have been rejecting. And that is ultimately the message. So the message is not institutions, it's not Pope, it's not churches, it's not even the Bible. The message is a relationship, a reconciled relationship between a creature and God. That's the ultimate goal of Christianity. It's reconciliation, and we can only be reconciled with the Almighty Creator who created all of us,
Right.
who gave us our life, who gave us our souls, who gave us everything we have.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Are you telling that to myself, to me, or to yourself? Because I already told you that I don't believe in God. So reconciliation, I don't believe in the Creator.
Sure.
And there's not one single human being in the whole history of this planet that has conquered or been give eternal life. Nothing is eternal. I'm gonna live 80 years if I'm lucky, if I'm healthy, if I look after myself. So will you? And that's it. And to the best I can to be the best version of me. There's no God, there's no hell, there's no heaven, there's no eternal life, and that's it.
But
that's the life
Could you be
you
wrong?
have.
Though? Yeah. Could you be wrong?
Good the best, make the best of it.
And I appreciate
Could
that
I?
view. Sorry.
Could I be wrong? Yes, but
Yeah.
so far we have no evidence of the contrary. There's no evidence of the contrary.
And
That's
what
a
would-
belief.
And what would be
Some people.
the kind of evidence that would be convincing to you?
Someone
like
who
that-
has lived an eternal life, someone who has
How would you
resurrected, or someone
Yeah.
has actually seen, talked to God, or God Himself.
So you
So-
would. So that's what I'm asking. Kind of
There's
like.
no
if-
evidence
How
whatsoever
would
for what you just
what
said.
would God need to do to convince you of this? What would He need to do?
We have no evidence whatsoever. We have no evidence
But
that
what would it for you personally? Not we. Let's talk about you personally. Like, what would be
perhaps when I
different?
die and I meet your Creator, I will be convinced that I'm wrong, but I will be dead.
You'll be dead then. But that's what I'm saying. What would in your life, during your life, what would be enough?
Having proof, evidence,
What is the satisfactory
any
proof?
kind of evidence that
So
God has to show Himself.
Okay. In
And-
what way?
and-
In what
and-
way? Yeah.
Well, starting fixing I don't like the word fixing, because we can't fix ourselves. And then Jesus came to this world to save us all and fix the world, and He didn't. He didn't. He died, and the world carry on without Him. We keep dying, and then we keep having people suffering, and we still have wars, same problems that we had. So what has changed?
So, sorry. So you said out there. The problem is out there. So I'm saying,
Out
what would it be
there.
for you? What would be the change for you that would convince you? What, like if tomorrow all wars were to cease, all of a sudden, would that you'd be pausing and thinking, oh wow, the wars have ceased all of a
No.
sudden? No. So
I
what
don't
would it
believe
be?
in God. I won't believe in God. I believe in
So I'm saying, what would change your mind?
nothing.
Okay. Well, then that means that you're closed-minded, aren't you?
I'm not closing-minded. What do you consider will be what is an evidence of the existence of a Creator? You came to me
Three.
asking
Yeah.
me about if I told you not, and then you gave me a huge long speech about Adam and Eve and the original sin and wanting to be gods, and I don't know. I never wanted to be God. I never wanted. I haven't met anybody who wants to be, perhaps Hitler, but I don't know. I think that I just want to be me and to be alive and respect you, respect other people,
Sure.
and not trying to put on others my way of life. My way of life is the one who fit to me and makes me happy. I don't know. I never thought about it, and I actually I really don't care. I would like to have a better world. Yes, equality. It would be something. I won't believe if suddenly we start to learn how to live and respect each other in more equal and respectful world. If the world starts to be relative equal and without, I don't know, disease and without war, and I would just believe that we are in a better place. The things are getting better. We are learning how to live in harmony with this planet. Not that God is changing everything. I don't believe in God. I don't believe in any God.
That's very clear. You've said it multiple times. I'm not doubting that that's what your current position is. And my question was more about what
Nothing will change that. I think that if suddenly we start to live in, I think it's up to us, humans, to understand that that's the planet we have. We need to live in harmony with this planet. We need to change things. We have the raising of the level of the climate change is upon us. We are suffering a lot. So many countries are suffering. We will suffer as well. We have an overpopulation. We still don't want to talk about controlling of population. We are taking over the planet, like killing other species because our species is uncontrolled. We are out of control. So when we learn to have self-control, respect the space of others, respect the planet, respect other species, and live in harmony with that, this is us learning how to preserve our own existence. Or I can believe in eternal life that way, not my eternal life, but eternal life of our species, when you learn how to live in harmony with our planet. And this is up to us to learn. We can't wait for miracles.
Yeah, and I'm not advocating for miracles, but I would go back to me. The answer would be I'm not sure that I can expect a solution from anyone who's anything like me, because it goes back to my definition of what the problem is. What is the problem? Why are we making a mess out of this climate? Why are we? Why is it? Yeah, greed, right? It's greed.
We are greed.
Yeah, we are greed. So exactly, that's what I was saying. That is the problem. The problem
and
is
it's
greed.
too many of us. Too many of us in the world. In the next few decades, we're going to reach 9 billion people on this planet, and the planet can't take it anymore. And that's it. We need to learn how to control ourselves, even population. Like in the past, people was in constant war, and we have so many diseases that kill half of the population. Now we learn how to have antibiotics, and we learn how to survive, and we live longer. But didn't learn how to control. Didn't learn how to. What happened when we have like overpopulation of one animal over the other? That's an imbalance. So that's what's happening.
Yeah.
We lost the balance.
Okay. But thank you so much for your time, for your views, for
You're
your
very
thoughts.
welcome.
My intention was not to.
I hope it didn't overwhelm you with my.
No. I'd really just thank you for your views and your thoughts, right? And like I said, I know that I cannot convince anyone of anything,
But I don't
can
believe
only.
that was your intention.
My intention is always to share what I believe, right? Because I find that people have a misunderstanding of what Christianity is, what Christianity believes, and I find that quite frequently when people that I speak to. And so I was trying to basically correct some of that, right? But it was towards in good nature, because I do believe that knowledge is important and truth are important, and we can draw our own conclusions based on the facts. But we don't have the right facts, then I'd like to correct that at least, right? So that was my attempt here, if that makes any sense. Yeah. But I appreciate your sharing and your time, certainly, and thank you again for your time. Yeah, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Awesome stuff. Thank you.